So, you've got an amazing world and you're ready to tell a story. Or maybe it's the other way around, and you've got a story in mind, and following my advice, you're building the world around it. But now you're stuck. You don't know what story you want to tell exactly. If that sounds familiar, this video is for you. Today, we're diving into plot design in fantasy, both the traditional hero-driven approach and some alternatives to the ever-present hero's journey, inspired by Ursula K. Le Guinn's The Carrier Bag Theory of Fiction. Welcome to another episode of Just in Time Worlds with your host, Marie Mullaney. Let's start with the hero's journey. The classic story structure we pretty much all know and love, even if we don't know the name. And let's be honest, there's a reason this formula is everywhere. It works. It comes with built-in tension right there in the structure. Readers are used to it, and for the most part, they like it. So, what is this awesome structure that just builds your story for you? At its core, the hero's journey follows a simple but powerful structure. A protagonist is thrown out of their ordinary world by a challenger or a crisis. Now, they have a goal, something they want or need. There's an obstacle in their way, whether it's an external villain or an internal flaw. They embark on a journey, facing trials, allies, and enemies. At the climax, they confront a final challenge, often a battle, and they emerge victorious but changed. They return to their world transformed by their experience. Let's take some classic examples. Lord of the Rings, Frodo's goal is clear: destroy the One Ring. His obstacles include Sauron, all the orcs, the corrupting influence of the ring, and his own internal struggle with the temptation of power. And then, of course, he overcomes it in the end while a big battle is fought at the gates. Star Wars, A New Hope. Luke's goal is to destroy the Death Star. He is opposed in this goal by the Empire, Darth Vader, and his own self-doubt. His change arc is learning to trust the Force, setting him on the path to becoming a Jedi. So, that's what a hero's journey is. Simple, right? Well, yeah, no. If you want to craft a compelling hero's journey, you've got to focus on some key elements. First up, clear stakes. What happens if the hero fails? The higher the stakes, the more gripping the journey. Secondly, a meaningful character arc. The hero should change in a way that ties into the story's themes. They should learn something. Third, an emotional payoff. The victory should feel earned. Readers need to believe the struggle was worth it. And if you have a villain, make them compelling too. A strong protagonist, whether it's a person, a system, or even nature itself, makes the hero's struggle more powerful. That being said, not all stories need a traditional villain. Some focus on man versus nature or man versus self. Take the movie Iron Will, which is about a young man racing across the Arctic in a sled, a dog sled. His struggle is nature and fear. He faces punishing conditions in the Arctic wilderness as he competes in this brutal sled dog race. And on top of that, he's terrified of crossing ice because his father died that way. But to win the race, he must face that fear, proving that sometimes the biggest battles are internal. If you want to check out how I implemented the hero's journey, I have completed my book Sangwheel Chronicles, my epic fantasy series, and that follows Louis, my protagonist, who faces both external and internal conflicts set against the backdrop of a rebellion filled with complex characters. If you love epic fantasy, check it out. The links are in the description, and it has received some good reviews from people who are not related to me. So I'm sure that you'll like it. But, I mean, everybody does the hero's journey, right? What if you don't want the hero's journey? Not every fantasy story has to be about a hero overcoming a great challenge. Let's talk about Ursula K. Le Guinn's carrier bag theory of fiction and alternative approaches to the plot of The Hero and His Sword. In the carrier bag theory of fiction, Ursula K. Le Guinn argues that the earliest human tools weren't weapons, they were bags to carry food. In the same way, not all stories need to be about war and conquest. Many great narratives can be told about gathering, preserving, and sustaining people instead. So let's leave the violent conflict of heroes behind and explore some alternative plot structures, starting with a gathering plot. Instead of a hero defeating an enemy, the protagonist's goal in the gathering plot is to collect, protect, or preserve something valuable, whether that's knowledge, culture, people, or memories. For example, imagine a group of scholars in a post-apocalyptic world working desperately to save the last magical books before they're lost forever. They're not battling an evil warlord trying to burn their library. Instead, their struggle is against radiation, fire, and the slow decay of time. Occasionally, they might encounter people who need to be convinced that these books are worth saving. Their journey isn't about conquest, it's about preservation. And their victory is about building a safe haven where others can come and study to rebuild the world. So if you want to write a gathering plot, ask yourself, what knowledge, people, or memories in my world need saving? And what happens if those things are lost? Now let's look at another alternative structure, the weaving plot. This plot isn't about a single great battle. Wow! Instead of being a plot about a battle or a rebellion or conquest, this plot is about weaving together different groups of people using diplomacy and trade, the slow, intricate work of finding commonality between different groups and bringing them together. For example, imagine a world of rival city-states, each vying for dominance in a medieval-style setting. War looms on the horizon, but instead of a warrior rising to unite them through conquest, a group of merchants step in. They travel between the cities, forging trade agreements and creating economic interdependence. Their mission is to replace battlefields with marketplaces, turning swords into contracts. If you want to craft such a weaving plot, ask yourself, what groups of people need to be connected in my world? Who benefits from keeping them divided? And who seeks unity? The heart of the weaving story lies in the struggle of those who try to build bridges, facing opposition from those who thrive on conflict, but without necessarily resorting to war. Now, let's explore our third plot structure, the maintenance plot, with a side order of the cyclical plot. What if your story is not about breaking the world, but about holding it together? For example, imagine a dying magical city that requires constant upkeep to survive. Its foundations are crumbling, its enchantments are flickering. A group of caretakers, whether they're engineers or mages or laborers, struggle to keep the city functioning. Each has their own skills, their own responsibilities, and their own tensions. The city isn't just a setting, it's a problem that never fully goes away, and only through repairs does it get prolonged. So this kind of story also ties into what Le Guinn argued for, a more circular plot. Instead of building towards a dramatic climax, events keep repeating in a cycle. The city breaks down, the characters fix it, until it breaks again. There's no ultimate victory here, just the ongoing act of survival and maintenance. This kind of maintenance plot can make for really great stories. Think of this like Terry Pratchett's Night Watch. Vimes isn't out to change the world. He's just trying to hold things together. The tension isn't about defeating an enemy. It's about staving off collapse. To craft a maintenance plot, ask yourself, what is slowly falling apart? And who is working collectively to hold that together? And what tensions arise within that effort? And if you want to make that a cyclical plot, consider what cycles exist in your world, magical, political, or personal. Now, let's move to our fourth and final plot structure in the carrier bag, the hidden story. Not all stories need to be about kings and warriors or revolutionary leaders. What about the servants, the refugees, or the outcasts, the people history forgets? For example, imagine a refugee camp on the border of a magical war. The great battles rage far away, but here in the camp, people from different cultures must learn to work together. They form unlikely bonds and carve out fragile existences while history marches on without them. So to create a hidden story, ask yourself, who in my world is overlooked and what happens in the margins of my story? And then ask, how can I tell their tale? But what if you do want to write a hero-driven story, just not the usual kind of hero? Let's explore two plot types that build on the hero's journey, but take it in a different direction. First is post-heroic. In a post-heroic story, the great battle is already won. But what happens next? Victory isn't the end of the journey. It's the beginning of a new, more complicated struggle. A classic example comes from the myth the Odyssey, which deals with Odysseus' struggles to return home to Ithaca after the Trojan War. The poem explores ideas about fate, retribution, and perseverance. Another example comes from anime, Frieren, Beyond Journey's End. The story starts after the hero's party has already defeated the Demon King. Now Frieren, the immortal elf, must face the far more personal challenge of watching her mortal friends age and pass away while she remains unchanged. The story explores memory, regret, and what it means to move forward once the adventure is over. And if you want a deeper take on Frieren, I spoke about her in my Immortals video in the info card. To craft a post-heroic story, ask yourself, what happens after a great battle? What struggles come for the hero in peacetime? Can they return home? Can they return to life as it was before? But there is another way to twist the classic hero's journey, and that is by subverting it into tragedy. A tragedy starts off like the hero's journey. There's a protagonist, there's a goal, but instead of triumph, the story ends in failure and downfall. The hero isn't transformed into something greater, they're undone by fate, flaws, or circumstance. Classic examples are King Lear and Hamlet by Shakespeare. Both characters believe they are the heroes of their own stories, but their journeys spiral into disaster. Their fatal flaws, pride, indecision, drive them toward ruin, and instead of victory, they meet the inevitable, tragic ends. If you want to write a tragedy, read Shakespeare. Seriously, all of his tragedies are great. A tragedy is hard to pull off, and understanding their structure is key to making them successful. If you want more modern examples, read Joe Abercrombie, George R.R. Martin, or Robin Hobb's Farseer trilogy, or The Poppy War by R.F. Kong. All of those are great tragedies, and it can be amazing to do them, but they are hard to write, and you're going to need to explore how the greats do it to pull it off. Anyway, to craft a subverted hero's journey or a tragedy, ask yourself, how can the traditional hero's journey unravel instead of resolving? How can the hero's fatal flaw come out and scuttle his victory? So, we've covered 7 types of stories. The hero's journey, which is the classic protagonist versus obstacle leading to transformation. The gathering plot, a story about preserving knowledge, people, or memories. The weaving plot, a story about diplomacy, alliances, and bringing people together. The maintenance plot, preventing collapse and keeping the world running. The cyclical story, repeating patterns and ongoing struggles. That's with a maintenance plot, actually, so we're still there. The hidden story, tales of the overlooked and the forgotten. The post-heroic and subverted hero stories, what happens after the victory or when the hero fails. But there's an elephant in the room we haven't talked about yet. These non-heroic stories sound great and all, but how do you make them commercially viable? Let's talk about that. So the question is really, how do you make a non-heroic story compelling enough to sell? And the answer is simple. Apply the same storytelling principles that make the hero's journey exciting without forcing the story into the hero's journey structure. The key elements you need to include in the story are tension. There must be stakes, even if they're not resolved through battle. Maybe it's the survival of a tribe, the preservation of knowledge, the maintenance of a crumbling city, or a refugee camp struggling to coexist. Whatever the stakes are, something must be at risk to keep the readers invested. Secondly, give your characters agency. Just because they aren't warriors doesn't mean they should be passive. They still need to make active choices and drive the story forward, even if those decisions involve diplomacy, invention, or problem solving rather than violence. And thirdly, find your emotional resonance. Readers connect with stories about hope, survival, love, and human connection, not just action. A story doesn't need a big final showdown. It needs a heart. Dig into your character's emotions so that your readers will feel them too. The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Guinn is a fantastic example of a non-hero's journey story about diplomacy and survival, not battle. And Legends and Lattes by Travis Baltree is a cozy fantasy about an orc opening a coffee shop after retiring from adventure. And these two prove that compelling stories don't need world-ending stakes. What kind of fantasy plot do you want to write? Drop me a comment below and let's talk about it. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into plot design, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and maybe check out this other video on the problems with an overstuffed plot. A very big thank you to all the members of my channel who help ensure that my cats get food every month and keep me making more and better videos. Join them for the price of a cup of coffee a month and get all of these cool perks. And I will see you soon for another episode of Just-in-Time World Building, where we build what we need when we need it.